All right. Good. Okay. So, I'm going to give you guys a chance to jump in if there's something on Thursday or Friday that we may or may not get to. Is there anything that caught your attention that maybe you didn't know before? Something new that you got out of this study this week? Tom?
You know, I've always wondered why all these battles and stuff, God has Joshua and them go in and eradicate, whole tribes and stuff. And I've always wondered, why. Well, the last paragraph of Sunday wrapped it all up for me.
All right.
It was my, I came with a better understanding of why all this was going on, so.
Oh, nice. Anybody else? It's a difficult thing to understand. I don't know where it was, but I was reading something on this lesson. It might have been just some notes even, but that topic is hard to understand why it was allowed to, this kind of destruction for any one people in particular. But you can go back to the flood, actually, and ask that question. That one, it seems to be a little bit more understandable, I think, in our minds. But then you got all the Amalekites, Canaanites, all this stuff going on. But we often think that God is a God of love, but we tend to forget that the foundation of God is his love and his justice. You need both. That's who God is, love and just. So as we go through this, maybe keep that in the back of your mind. That helped me out when I was looking at that too, Tom. I came across that and I was like, oh yeah, justice. I forgot about that.
Hey, Nathan. So, am I allowed to read a couple verses here?
Please do.
So what really stood out to me was in Numbers 33 and 51, he says, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you have crossed the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, destroy all their engraved stones, destroy all their molded images, and demolish all their high places. You shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell in it." So it's almost like it wasn't God's purpose to go in and annihilate the people. He wanted the Israelites to go in and have those people dispossess their land and destroy all their idols and so it wasn't like he said, hey, you guys, get your weapons, we're going in and just totally annihilate these people. I think there's a lot of mercy there for time for repentance.
So is God that we know in the Bible the God of every person that ever lived? Does everybody have a choice?
I found the conclusion on the further thought on Friday, the top paragraph, somewhat helpful. The whole week really stunk, in my opinion. Because I think God's getting a bad rap here that he's a God of war, and he's not. He's a God of incredible love and incredible endurance and a love that will not be suffocated.
Yep.
And so his essence is to give free choice to all his creation. And this is the cost, is that when that free choice is abused, he has to endure it. He doesn't go out and squash it or annihilate it, or he would have done that at the beginning with Lucifer and just ended this whole travesty. Mm-hmm. And so he has won a false accusation simply by mercy, grace, and suffering in his own soul that he's continued, and he's never broken stride with that. And so the people that were annihilated, as was just pointed out, had already been loved to death. And they were at a place where they were self-destructive. You know, they're slaughtering their firstborn perpetually. Why are they living in walled cities among fellow heathen? Because they're killing each other. You know, I meditated a long time on that. The Jews didn't come in there and do something new. They're already killing each other. And so he just put an end to the international bloodshed, if you will. And so there's God has remained loving, merciful, and fatherly to everyone throughout all the great controversy, including Lucifer, all the way to the most sin-saturated.
Did you see in this the patience of God with all these people?
Yeah.
That was something that jumped out.
And I didn't get that
patience.
till the Thursday or Friday, but it took us a bloody long time to get there. And I'm like, come on, give us the gospel here.
David had something, and then Dr. Turk.
We have to remember that all those nations plus Egypt were all idolatrous. Mm-hmm. And they can't exist in a God-controlled universe. So, idolatry, and we have to look at it in our own lives and see who are we reflecting. Are we idolatrous too?
Dr.
Turk. On Sunday's lesson in the comments, about 60% down, a nation cannot rise to a moral ground that is higher than that of the gods its people worship. What gods are we in the United States worshiping right now?
I was going to go there.
Yeah. Homosexuality, abortion.
You name it.
Yeah.
I mean, just materialistic love.
In my lifetime, we've gone from, being a Christian nation to not being a Christian nation.
Oh, yeah.
And how true that is. And that's true in our own lives, too. I won't rise morally above the gods that I worship.
Something to consider.
To go along with what Steve said, God's original purpose wasn't for annihilation. I looked up what the meaning of dispossession was, and one meaning was removed from occupancy. And if you look on Tuesday, it says, in order to avoid contamination, Israel had to destroy all the elements that were propagating corruption. And that's what God wanted done.
Yeah, by beholding, we become changed, right? Was that true for the Israelites going into Canaan? As that verse that you actually read about tearing down all the idols, and you get that stuff out of the sight, out of mind. By beholding, we become changed.
And I think a lot of the reason the way it went down is because Israel's not responding to God's commands. If he would have just led them in there and they would have followed him right from the start, what he said to do, and knowing and having that faith that he was out before them, would there have been all these battles? Would there have been all that annihilation? I mean, but ultimately, God's got a lot of different avenues, and his ultimate plan for war was peace. In Micah, it says, take your weapons of war and turn them into garden tools,
You think about it, my mind started going this way. I don't know if anybody else did. But why were they going back there? And did you think about it as they were going back? That was originally their land. Did anybody go there? No? I started going there, and you think about it, you go back to, Jacob, and his 12 sons, the decisions that they made, all of this started transpiring. They ended up in Egypt. All of this. So think about us now and the decisions that we're faced with. How can a decision possibly change the direction, specifically a decision outside of God's will, right?
Well, one thing that jumped out at me was that when the Israelites were going in God's forbearance with them and the long suffering and allowing it to ripen, which is what's happening on our earth today, all the evil that we see around us, God is allowing Satan to show his government, show what it's like, and all that. But to me, these stories in the Old Testament are like a little mini picture of the final destruction.
Yeah.
Because he's giving these people hundreds of years to make a decision, and he's showing who he is, he's showing his character, and they're saying no, 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 and finally, God's forbearance ends, and there's a total annihilation, and that's not what he wanted, which is what we're getting from our lesson. That was not God's plan.
Yep.
And what's going on in our earth today was not God's plan. His plan was peace. His plan was to win as many as he could by showing his character. And so to me, it's like little mini stories that lead to the final destruction at the end of the world. When the people who have consistently said no, rebelled, hardened their hearts, which is what the Canaanites did, there is a final destruction. And it's not what God wanted, but free choice.
Well, you just reminded me of the very first Bible verse on the lesson, Genesis 18:25. Kind of goes, I think it goes along with what you said. Is that it? That be far from thee to do after this manner. No, that's not the one. Oh, which one was it? Oh, I'm on the wrong page. That's why. That would help. Genesis 15:16. That's what I was looking for. But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. Not yet full. So they weren't listening to the promptings of God. Refusing. That cup wasn't full yet.
We got to remember that the first four generations, from Abraham down to Joseph and the 12, were living in their land, but it wasn't their land yet. They were strangers and foreigners. And that's what Jacob struggled so much for when Joseph invited him down to Egypt. How can I leave what God gave to us? And God made it very clear to him. You remember in an earlier lesson from last quarter that for 4 more generations you're going to be dispossessed. And we remember that those first 4 generations, remember how Ishmael was rude to Isaac, and so there was conflict even the first 4 generations still in Palestine. So I think one of the things that came to me, the discussion question on Friday, the implication of God being judge as the supreme judge of the universe, and it struck me that only God has full knowledge of everything that's out there, but God is also the only one who has full knowledge of the heart, soul, and motive of each of his creatures. And that's Satan's lie, is that we have self-knowledge and our self-knowledge is adequate. That's what the whole tree of knowledge of good and evil is. You are God. You do know all good and all evil for yourself. And that's a lie, because we don't read our hearts. We don't know our motives. Only God can read our hearts. And so it did a little play on that. Full knowledge leads to full salvation, which is full of God's mercy. Whereas self-knowledge leads to self-salvation, which leads to self-ruin, either through self-righteousness, which is a death trap, exhaustion, depression, etc., or self-ruin through just global anarchy and self-will run riot. And it's interesting to me that by preserving self-will, free will, as long as he has, that at the end of time in Revelation, every knee will bow, every tongue, righteous and unrighteous, will confess, you are just, you are merciful, and you are right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And there's no other way but self-mercy, but mercy to accomplish that. You know, I don't ever see God going on the arbitrarily destructive. I see him preserving free choice and then allowing people to be put out of their misery when the time is fully ripened.
Mm-hmm. I saw Russ's hand.
In the last couple of weeks in this lesson, we've looked at the idea the time of the Amorites has not yet come, and what kind of a witness they had. I think Paul addressed that in Romans 2. Romans 2:14, he says, "For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, these, having not the law, are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts." And so through the second book, through nature even, these people had a witness through all those generations. They had an opportunity. And obviously some of them took it. Paul says this, and he's not talking about his day. He's talking about the past. And so there was opportunity to hear the gospel, even in that limited manner.
So, who was tasked to let the people know during Noah's time of God? 120 years, right? Who was God's vessel to witness to the Amalekites and the Canaanites at that time? I'm thinking the Israelites, the Israelite people, right? Who's tasked for that now? How important is evangelism? We have to do it. We have to want to do it.
I want to read this quote from Signs of the Times, 5/19/1881. Signs of the Times, 1/6/1881. "It is those who have not a keen sense of the exceeding sinfulness of sin that are ready to question the justice of God and punishing with such severity the sins of the Amalekites, Canaanites, and Midianites. Those who love sin are unable to comprehend God's dealings with his subjects."
Did I see another hand? I thought I did. No. Oh.
And when you're talking about sin, sin is contagious. So, like you said, it's the Israelites had the responsibility to witness. And we have that same responsibility, but it's not like we put on a hat that says witness on it and, okay, today I'm going to try to witness. I mean, that should just be wherever we are, whatever we're doing, that should just be a natural, and that's the way it should have been for Israel. They were to live by those statutes, and that was their life, and everybody was just to, that's what I want. Mm-hmm. We want what the Israelites
How does
had.
that happen? That's the question for everybody. How does that happen?
Well, we are apart from the world, the worldly things.
Yeah.
I mean, the world, that's where sin abounds.
Yeah. It goes back to very, very basics. If you think about it. How's your study life? How's your prayer life? If you have those two, you can't keep your mouth shut.
Something I didn't see in the lesson, but is worthy of contemplation, and maybe I'm way off base here, but I was thinking about it this week, and I was talking with someone else, and they kind of led me down this road, so maybe I'm all, wet behind the ears, but, Canaan was cursed way back when Noah, remember Noah got drunk, and Ham saw his father's nakedness and went out and told the other two brothers, and they went in and covered him up. And Noah cursed Canaan. So if you look at it that way, you're like, okay, so why was Canaan cursed for Ham's sin? But if you look in the Bible, in Leviticus 18, verses 7 and 8, it says, "You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is your father's nakedness." And then in Leviticus 20:11 it says, "If a man lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death." So basically, this is an idiom for an incestuous relationship, son with mother. We know that God is love, and that, there was laws to protect society and family. But I've not heard this discussed at all in the lesson, that the possibility here that Canaan and the Canaanites themselves were the way they were because of an incestuous relationship in the beginning. It's food for thought.
The lesson did touch a little bit on that sexuality anyway with the Canaanites on Sunday's lesson. Is there any other thoughts? Well, I don't want to miss anything. We can start at the beginning and go through, or we can start. Maybe we'll start on Sunday. On the question there, what are these texts telling us about God's larger plan in offering the land of Canaan to the Israelites? Did anybody write anything in there? As you read down through that section, were you shocked a bit? I didn't realize the Canaanites had gone into all those things, sacrificing their firstborn, and it's kind of crazy. It's actually, this week I came across a little video. And I don't know who it was, but the Pope was standing right beside her as she was making a little speech-like thing, and she was talking about human sacrifice and saying that that's what we've always done and what we will always do. And I had to replay it because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She goes into very detail, and I never thought I'd ever read an article or watch a video that was talking about that. I sent it to Jess. Did I send that to you? I sent it to somebody.
I think it's interesting on Sunday, that first paragraph. I'm going to skip through the first two. It says, the nations abhorrent practices, and I'm going to skip them. I'm going to go to witchcraft, necromancy, and spiritualism. I think it's so interesting that those would be brought up after yesterday's date. I mean, everywhere you look, it's just
so prevalent these days.
Yep. And it's not thought of in the importance or the reality of how prevalent spiritualism is. It's just, oh, I'm going to go over here dressed up or whatever. Yeah.
I wrote on that question for Sunday that God did not want the Israelites to become like the inhabitants of the land he was about to give them. He wanted them to stay clean and honor him.
I think somebody.
One of the issues in establishing Israel in that geographical area was that the trade routes of the world went through the Middle East. And so Israel was the nation of Israel in the eyes of God were in a gathering dispensation. People saw them, they saw their practices, and they could ask. At the cross, that all changed, and it became a go ye into all the world dispensation.
Yep.
That's just one aspect of centering them in that land.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of a land bridge through that whole area. If you look at the maps. Oh, David's got.
So we know that God could have wiped out those nations before Israel came in. So there's a reason that God had his people go into all these towns and do the work of destroying the people that were there. And it's because they needed to have it in their face what idolatry does. Because he can't put another group of people that are full of idolatry into Canaan. So he had to show them what it means. And it's interesting to me that Rahab was the only one that was saved, her and her family, and she was a prostitute, you know. So it tells you something about what that land was like.
Was that in the lesson, or was it, I was reading Illinois too, but I forget where it was, but it said that the first time the Israelites were coming, that the Canaanites were packing up and leaving. They we're out of here. Here they come. But then when the spies came back with a false report, and then they had to go wander again for another 40 years, they dug in their heels. The Canaanites and everybody dug in their heels, and they're like, there's nothing to be worried about. But had they gone with the original plan, the Canaanites would still be in existence probably, or maybe not. I don't know. With what Seth brought up, they may have been cursed from the beginning. I don't know. They may have never changed their ways. God knows that. We don't. But they were ready to just move out and let the Israelites come in. And I mean, they must have known also, all of those nations must have known that that was originally their land to begin with anyway. They must have. I mean, we have record even to this day in the Bible, so they must have had, even though they were gone for 400 years, they must have known that that was where they originally were from, There's a lot of little aspects and pieces to this that are interesting as you kind of travel through what we have for record in the Bible. Anybody? Oh, Jay does.
One of the things that strikes me is that the devil's best fake is a near copy of the genuine. Mm-hmm. And so we don't see the Israelites, Abraham getting the sacrifice thing, he's sort of all alone in that. We see Isaac up on Mount Moriah. We don't really see pagans human sacrifice at that point. It starts, and so I see the devil copying, close copy, so it's not what God's going to sacrifice for you, because that was the message to Abraham on Moriah. It's not your son that's going to sacrifice. Look over there in the bushes, it's the ram, it's my son. Mm-hmm. In the whole covenant process, it's my son, it's myself that I'm going to sacrifice to redeem you. So the devil copies it, and within 3 generations, 4 generations, because all these Canaanites are near cousins. They're all first and second cousins of these people, of each other. And then within just 5 generations, it's gone to pot. So I see the devil never being smart, but copying and then twisting the meaning, reversing the meaning. It's what you're doing for God rather than what God's done for you.
It's a lesson to us about the details as we read through the Bible. The details matter because just a slight little difference the devil will throw at us. And if you don't reckon. Yeah. Yeah.
Canaanites must be uber righteous. They're giving not only all their flocks, but their children. The firstborn of all their children, you know. How tempting would that be to buy it?
Yeah. And the whole thing of that is to appease the gods that the people made up. That's what that was all about. Well, we'll get rain if we do this. And the devil has power. We cannot dismiss that. He's not an idiot, and that he doesn't have power. He does. So he can make these things happen after they do something like that. They can get rain or whatever, you name it, whatever they did, to appease this God, to appease that God, and make it look like they were worshiping an actual God. I mean, those people got to the point where they actually believed these things. You wouldn't do those things if you didn't actually believe it.
So you were mentioning earlier about the Satanists, and we saw this week. He was a priest or whatever in the Satanist church, and one of the high ups. And well, praise the Lord, he's worships the true God now. But he was saying a lot of stuff that's very disturbing, and obviously they're sacrificing children and people. They're sacrificing them.
It's happening today.
And to appease whoever, and ultimately the devil. But these people, they put curses on other people, and their curses happen. So, when Satan, obviously it's not going to be a curse that happens to you or me, because we know that God's going to protect us, because we're clinging to him, and we're letting him fight our battles, and he's not going to let us. But, to other people, Satan can make these things happen. So these people are all about it, because, hey, look, I put a curse on that, and look what happened. It's very much a spiritual warfare.
Oh, yes.
And man, it's so active. It's so all around us. I go to bed early at night. I don't know what happens at night anymore, but man, I don't want to be out. Not in this world.
Now, to qualify what I said, God's got a lot more power, right? My wife has actually been reading a book on spiritualism. Scott Ritzma helped this man put it together. Belt of Truth Ministry, I don't know. And she actually had to stop reading it from what this man that came out of spiritualism was sharing in this book. Scott Ritzma won't actually tell you on video the things that go on, but it is in the book. But in this book, and actually on one of the videos I saw of this guy with Scott Ritzma, he says that he would be taken by evil angels to houses and stuff, and the houses that they could not get into were the houses of the Seventh-day Adventists that were praying and studying and evangelizing. Oh, she's going to correct me.
Just to go on a little further, which was really neat, was this person, this guy that had been born and raised to be the son of the devil. When he was younger, he learned also that when he would go to the small kids, elementary school or whatever, there were children that he also couldn't whisper things into their ears or anything like that, because the parents had prayed over their children, and the parents were continuing to pray for their children. They were protected even when they weren't, in their home or with their parents. Just the parents' prayers over them, which I thought was pretty neat.
Yeah. Pray for your kids. Oh, right here, David, in front. Linda.
That statement is a really good segue into, I want to make sure that I pass out cards to anybody who wants to pray for our school children. I did that last year, and I've neglected to do it this year. And it's been on my heart. So I have cards with the names of families on them. I'd like to pass them out today. That these kids and their families have prayer coverage for the rest of the school year. And I'm sorry that I didn't get to this sooner. But I guess today's the day. Jessica just gave me the segue into this. And for the van drivers to protect.
Yeah.
We need to protect our kids.
Yep.
So I would like to do that today.
Yeah. Definitely take a card, but you don't need one to pray for the kids.
No, you don't need one, but I have one.
Definitely take one.
I have one for each family, and I would
Yeah.
appreciate. We did it last year. Our school needs prayer coverage. We all need prayer coverage. So anyway, that's my.
Yeah. Janice.
To go along with what Linda was talking about, we have a little boy at school who's from town. And I was talking with him the other day at school, and he said, I just love this school.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, we need more town students in our schools, so we should pray for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Monday, we got, 15, 20 minutes maybe. The Supreme Judge. There's a question there. What are these verses saying about God's moral character? How does the role of God as judge of the universe help us understand the question of divine war? Anybody write anything in there or contemplate that?
Well, it's what I got was, can I read Romans?
Oh, I'd much rather hear somebody read than me talk.
Romans 1:18, I believe. What's that? For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So, we just got to remember that God's wrath is against the sin. God's wrath is not against the sinner. And, like all through this lesson, we see God's mercy but his justice too, because he wanted them to go in there, and he wanted them to go in. The original plan, like you said, was they were going to head out, the dispossession, but he wanted them to go in there and tear down all the high places, tear down all the idols, get rid of all that trash. And it's the sin that God just cannot tolerate, the sin.
And I think David brought out a point that you think about if had that happened. Of course, eventually, I guess it did. But had that happened, think of the amount of work, the labor that would have gone into taking all that stuff and getting rid of it. And God could have gone in there ahead of time and just made this all disappear. But there was a lesson that they were supposed to have in the hard labor. You learn something when you stack wood and you do hay and all that stuff. You learn something, right? They need to learn something, that this is bad. It's going to cost a lot. They needed to see it. Yeah, go ahead.
But on that same note, before Jake, it's like things that we might have in our homes. We've all heard stories about the devil coming into houses that might possess some people don't even know that they have in their houses. I mean, that's how technical this warfare is. It could be a book. It could be a statue that is an idol that came from, you know. So, and my wife and I have even, over the years, we've searched out, you know, we make sure that there's nothing in this house, you know. If something goes on with one of the kids, we, you know, is there anything that we could possibly have? It's technical.
The whole problem is this is a not an abandonment posture that we're in, though. You know, sin, it's not sinners God's after, it's sin. And sin is the lie. The lie is that we have a self-life that we define, that we have truth, self-truth that we define, that we are made, self-made by our own efforts, by our own efforts, that we are sustained, self-sustained. If this kind of stuff is in our environment and we don't know it, do you think God's silent? Absolutely not. We've got His Word, we've got His Spirit, we've got the testimony of fellow believers. God's not going to leave us confused. So this whole war is not a God against sinners. This is an emancipation thing that God's involved with. You know, and He's using His believers to spread light, to spread the good news that there's rescue here and now as well as here and hereafter. And so that's why I hate this whole holy war thing, because it makes it sound like it's personal against sinners. It's not. It's against the lie that you can save yourself. God can save you, and God is saving you bit by bit, step by step, light beam by light beam. Stay in the light. Look for the light. Share the light.
Yeah. How important is the Bible, right? I mean, even going back to what you were talking about, things that you may not consider an idol or whatever that might be in your house. Our relationship with God, study and prayer, those things will be revealed to us, right? We don't have to, you know, clean out our room completely because maybe something's there, right? God will reveal it to us. Other than that, we're protected. You are protected. And then when you know what it is, if you don't get that, and I'm not talking about some item, I'm talking about spiritually now too. If you have something and you won't get rid of it, you've put yourself on the wrong side. We can't be there. We have to, when it's revealed to us, we have to humble ourselves and we have to hang on to Him, because we can't change ourselves. I think that kind of goes along with what Jay, what you're getting at, is we can't do it, right? We can't do it. So all we can do is grab on like that woman with the issue of blood, reach down and touch the hem of His garment and don't let go.
Wednesday's lesson brings up a term called harim, which means banned, damned, or dedicated to annihilation. I've never seen that term, but that's the first paragraph in the light text on Wednesday. It's, you know, this is again about the character of God and His role as judge and all that stuff. Deuteronomy 33 has an interesting take on that. It's a pretty precious text to me. Verse 27 says, the eternal God, these are the blessings that Moses has left at the end of his time. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. And He shall thrust out the enemy from before thee, and shall say, destroy them. So this is the great controversy. And so that phrase, thrust out the enemy, in the Hebrew, it denotes sending them back to the father of lies. And so Jesus would refer to that when He said, ye are of your father, the devil, the father of lies. That's where Jesus got that concept. And so these people in this land, ones that had not become a law unto themselves, but had held to the father of lies, they were going back to their choice.
I think I was reading this morning. I think Romans 6:16 kind of speaks to what you're talking about. Know ye not that whom ye yield yourselves as servants to obey. His servants ye are, and whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness.
This whole lesson is reminding me of a quote from Testimonies to Ministers, page 21. And it says, like David, we may now pray, it is time for thee, Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law. Men have gone on in disobedience to God's law until they have reached a point of insolence that is unparalleled. Men are training in disobedience and are fast approaching the limit of God's forbearance and love. And God will surely interfere. And I think that's what we're seeing in this lesson.
Yeah.
That the disobedience had gotten unparalleled, and that they were fast approaching the limit of God's forbearance and love. His forbearance is just always there in that, and he has to intervene.
Yeah. Do we have a heart for other people? There are people, you can look around at society. We kind of touched on it earlier. You can look around at society. We're going to be losing a lot of people if we don't do what God has asked us to do. There are a lot of people right around us that are going the wrong way, and it's not even a gray area anymore. There's a lot of people going the wrong way in town, in Waterville, and you pick, right? In Norwalk. What can we do about that? Now we have to do it in God's strength, obviously, but he's asking us to work with him to do it, right? He needs us as some hands to do this. But we need to get our act together and start making this a prominent thing for our church.
You know, it's not sin that's destroyed in the lake of fire. It's sinners. And in Great Controversy, it says that Jesus, along with the saints, decide on the punishment of the wicked. And it's dealing with intensity and duration. So we're not talking about no flesh and blood here. We're talking about beings. And we have to make that decision. Now, I'm thankful that it's the righteous that are making those decisions. But there still has to be justice that's satisfied. Mm-hmm. Mercy steps down, if you recall, and justice takes its rightful place at the end.
Yeah. Has anybody watched or seen the sermon by Ivor Myers? It's called A Love Story. Has anybody seen that? I know some of us have, but I would highly recommend that this afternoon, if you're not out walking, pull that up on YouTube or on Audioverse, whatever, and listen to that. And he goes through and biblically proves through this whole concept of, and when even to the very final destruction of the wicked. Now this is all after, the millennium and everything. But he goes through and you can see it for yourself. He's talking through it, but he's taking you through the Bible. And even the destruction of the wicked, when they burn, finally, it's Jesus giving each one of his created beings one last hug. Because sin is consumed in the presence of God. And it's phenomenal. It's a look at this whole thing that I had never seen before. And there's a level of hope even in that I found anyway. That's what I found. But it's a Love Story by Ivor Myers. It's phenomenal. It explains a lot of this. But I saw. Oh, sorry. You already have it.
When Abraham entered the land of Canaan for the first time, and God said, unto thee will I give this land, and to your descendants. That at that time there was Canaanite sacrifices where they're sacrificing children and people, and yet God was merciful and spared them for hundreds of years. we know that while Abraham was in the land of Canaan, everywhere he sojourned, he built an altar of sacrifice. And we're told in Patriarchs and Prophets, as the Canaanites came there and saw these altars, that their mind was turned back to the creation story, and that not a few people followed Abraham or his descendants afterwards. So I think that, that's despite the wickedness that was abounding, God had his people in the midst, shedding light. And I think that's relevant to where we're at today. We need to still recognize that even in this wicked world that we live in, there are still people that are searching for something better, something different.
Mm-hmm. Bob was next.
I think there's definitely an important part of witnessing for all of us in this world, in the counsel of the Bible and the whole thing. But I think sometimes we could become feeling too important in that process.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm uncomfortable on some of the comments that I've read and heard through my lifetime about how important maybe I am in that process. For instance, the Bible definitely talks about, preaching and sharing your faith and witnessing, the SALT principle. That's all important. I know it is. But there's also a side of God's love, as I understand it, that he'll take care of, whether we're in the mix or not. I realize that in Ezekiel it gives that warning: if you don't warn your neighbors, about what's coming, then their blood is on your shoulder. I can tell you from experience that as a young pastor, when you move into an area, particularly if it's considered a dark county area, that can cause quite a bit of thought and going on. But we're told by Sister White, for instance, that there will be people in heaven who never heard the name of Christ, but who cherish the principles of righteousness.
Yep.
So that goes back to something that binds me to hope, and that is that the Bible does say, and it's been brought out here today, I think, the Bible says that we're all created with a measure of faith. So I have a problem believing that God is going to let somebody be destroyed if I don't get to them, or if no other fellow brother or sister in the church or wherever gets to them. Mm-hmm. I think about it. What was it, Albania years ago that was considered, godless. Remember the story about the woman who finally, when church leaders got to her, she pulled out her tithe that she'd been saving for 60 years and turned it over to the church and things like that. But anyway, I don't know. There seems to be balance. One thing I think that the book of we're studying now is that God is not trying to prove numerically that he's the winner in the great controversy, because it's pretty clear in Noah's day, if he preached for 120 years and you end up with his family, and go on down through, even to the point where Israel is held up as the real goalpost and the real ones that are going to share, and they blow it, and they're the ones that put the Son of God to death, and on and on. And the New Testament says, wide is the road to destruction, narrow, to salvation. So numerically speaking, there's got to be something so great about the character of God, and so important about however he's choosing to do it, that the onlooking universes, he himself and his plan, even to project in the Old Testament that sin will not raise its eyelid the second time, then this is a pretty complex thing that we're dealing with, and I'm glad that God has it all figured out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think what you're saying is correct. I think where we have to be careful is because I think we become complacent. If there's not a sense of urgency, I think we can very easily become complacent. And not that we're trying to save the world. Like Nate's not trying to save the world. The point is, to me anyway, what I get out of it is when I study, and when I have that prayer life and I'm connected with God, that whoever comes into my path, I'm willing to step out. I don't keep it to myself. Not that I have to go preach evangelistic series or anything like that. It may be that God is, actually, what is that one? Great Controversy, I think it's 488. Ellen White says that every person has a soul to save or lose. She also says somewhere else that every person in heaven will have at least one jewel in their crown, a soul that they've saved or led to being saved. Not that maybe I'm not saying that right, but so it may be only one person. If you're Doug Batchelor, it's probably thousands. If you're Nate, it may be one, right? But we just have to be willing to be willing, right? Yep. And the only thing we can do, you're not going to be willing if you don't know the Bible. If you're not praying, you're not going to be willing. But if you do those things personally, have a personal, he's a personal Savior. We have that. We cannot shut our mouths. We will tell people. We will, whatever it is. Seth, he tries to invite somebody home to his house. That's his thing. He loves doing that. Right? A guest comes in. Hey, come on home with me or whatever. That's his ministry, right? I like the sanctuary. I feel like that's my ministry. We all each, pastor, he loves the Revelation seminars. He loves that. That's his. Each of us has music. Going down to Portland and Waterville, singing music. Tom, the food in the back here, right? If each of us have our own little ministry, reaching out to the community in some way, right? That's, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jay. I'm kind of.
I've heard it said, college pastor, that, if you don't evangelize, there's one soul that will be lost, and that's yours.
Oh.
The reason we do this, because that's the proof that the love is real in our own heart, because we've lost evangelism rather than an exercise to prove our legitimacy about our self-salvation. We have now lost our fear and our doubt. We know that God has saved us, and we want God to save the friend next to us as well. And so we're on fire for him.
Yeah. Our only job is to help others find the person that can save them. Oh, Janice.
We're connected here. Yeah. One of my favorite stories is many, many years ago, a group of churches got together in England and decided that they wanted to hold an evangelistic series. So they put on this big evangelistic series. And at the end of the series, one little boy was baptized. And they all went away from that thinking, what a waste of money, what a waste of time. And that little boy was HMS Richards Sr. You never know.
Yep. You just got to be willing to share what we've been studying. But it's more important, the most important thing is that we are studying, that we are praying, that we do have a personal relationship with our Savior. Otherwise, people will see that we don't. They'll either see we do or we don't. So, all right, we got to end. We're running over. We'll just do a quick prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, help us to each get to know you better. We've studied maybe for years and prayed for years, but there's always room for growth, and we know that. Help us remember that. And help us to be willing as you show us where we need to change and things that we need to improve on or whatever it might be. Just show us that we can, and give us the faith that we need to know that we need you. We can't do it ourselves. Thank you for this lesson, and help us to have a good Sabbath. In your name, amen.